The rape and torture scandal facing Prince Harry as Meghan Markle panics over a cash crisis has just finally exploded into the mainstream. And if Harry was a man who gave a damn about Africa, if Meghan was a woman who, remember, so proudly boasts that she's part Nigerian, then why the hell have they not got on a plane?
And you talk about being a humanitarian, Meghan Markle. Excuse me, putting the rights of women and supporting women. Well, what about the women who are being abused? And I'm just so disgusted by them, Dan. Because they're about money. They're about using people's suffering to help themselves. It's not about trying to do the right thing.
Have Prince Harry and Meghan Markle just walked straight into the biggest humanitarian controversy of their entire post-royal lives? Because tonight, the pressure surrounding Harry's connection to African parks is exploding across mainstream media in a way we simply have not seen before. And this time, critics are asking a brutal question that is becoming impossible to ignore. If Harry and Meghan truly see themselves as global humanitarians, then why has there been so much silence surrounding these disturbing allegations? For years now, serious accusations linked to African parks have continued to circulate online and in investigative reporting. Allegations involving abuse against indigenous communities in parts of Africa have sparked outrage among critics, activists, and royal commentators alike. And while Prince Harry has publicly supported investigations into the matter, many people now believe that simply releasing statements is no longer enough. They want action. They want accountability. And above all, they want answers. What is making this story even more explosive is the timing. Because Harry and Meghan are already facing mounting criticism over their public image, their finances, and the future of their brand. From questions surrounding Archewell to ongoing scrutiny around their Hollywood ventures, critics argue the Sussexes are struggling to maintain the humanitarian reputation they once tried so hard to build. But now, this controversy threatens to overshadow everything else. So tonight, we're breaking down the allegations, the criticism, the growing backlash, and why some royal commentators believe this could become one of the defining crises of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's post-royal career.
We have been talking about the absolute humanitarian catastrophe attached to Prince Harry's African Parks charity for years. And this cannot be ignored. And his silence over this cannot be ignored. And his reputation, which is already in the bin as a result of the F-ups at Centre Bali, the closure of Archewell, and the financial and PR calamity attached to the Invictus Games, doesn't even compare to what is going on in Africa. And if Harry was a man who gave a damn about Africa, if Meghan was a woman who, remember, so proudly boasts that she's part Nigerian, then why the hell have they not got on a plane? Now, I just want to pause there for a moment, because what Harry is trying to say, what Team Sussex is trying to say is, this is old. You've heard about this before. Come on. It's regurgitated. We said nothing then, and we will say nothing now. Nothing to see here, folks. We got away with it first time around. But that is the critical line in this report. The wrongdoing, the rape, the torture involving Prince Harry's charity, ongoing. And this humanitarian doesn't want to say anything about it. Well, I'm sorry, Harry. I know you're a thicko. But that explanation does not stand. Because this new reporting is that the abuse, the rape, the torture is ongoing. Now, again, you've got to think about this. Harry and Meghan claim that they are woke warriors. But actually, when presented with evidence in their own organisation, they are just like the scumbags who let abuse go on. Nothing to see here. Just like the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs in the United Kingdom. Nothing to see here. And it's sickening. They are in a position of privilege. They have the opportunity to turn this around, and they won't. And you know why they won't? Because they do not want the bad publicity. They do not want the bad headlines. They do not want another issue at Harry's charity. But Harry is one of those woke warriors who talks a good game, but as soon as he is challenged himself, runs away. And this is so indicative of the way that he lives his life under Meghan Markle, isn't it?
Now, before we go any further, it is important to make one thing absolutely clear. Prince Harry himself has not been accused of personally committing crimes. The controversy centers around his connection to African parks and the growing criticism over whether he has done enough publicly and privately in response to the allegations surrounding the organization. But despite that distinction, critics say the silence coming from Team Sussex has become deafening. And this is where the backlash really starts to intensify. Because according to royal commentators and online critics, Harry and Meghan built their entire global image around compassion, activism, and humanitarian leadership. They positioned themselves as modern voices for justice, equality, and protecting vulnerable communities. So now, critics are asking, when a crisis emerges involving an organization connected to Harry, where is that same energy? Where is that same passion? Where is the leadership they constantly speak about? For months, reports and commentary surrounding African parks have continued circulating online, with activists and investigative journalists demanding more accountability and transparency. Critics argue that this situation should have prompted immediate and visible action from Harry himself. They say that if he truly wanted to demonstrate leadership, he would personally travel to affected communities, meet with investigators, speak directly with victims, and show the world he was committed to fixing the problem. Instead, according to critics, the public has mostly seen silence, carefully worded statements, and a continued focus on media appearances and business projects. And this is where comparisons to Princess Diana have exploded across social media. Because whether people loved Diana or not, there was never any doubt about her willingness to physically show up in uncomfortable situations. She walked through minefields. She visited AIDS patients during periods when fear and stigma dominated public opinion. She went directly into environments many public figures would avoid. Critics now say Harry speaks emotionally about continuing his mother's legacy, yet when faced with one of the most uncomfortable controversies attached to his public life, he appears distant and detached.
Obviously, it is a very complicated story, and I think up until now, in a way, Harry and Meghan have got away with it. As a result, the mainstream media are almost like, oh, this is too difficult, this involves rape and torture of Africans, oh, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. They believed Harry's claims back last year when he said, oh no, we're going to go and we're going to sort it out. But despite this big money-making event this week, P. Diana, in your country, in Arizona, Harry still hasn't visited African parks. He still hasn't said, I'm going to go there myself and make sure that I can see for myself that this abuse is not going on. I mean, what on earth is he doing, P. Diana? He could spend 3 months there. He could spend 6 months there. He could spend a year there to sort this shit out. But he's not. He's not. Instead, he's there in your country raising money.
It just shows you what a lack of leadership he shows for himself and how he is not like his mother. Because we have to remember, Princess Diana, she went to those uncomfortable places. She went to where people didn't want to go because she was a true leader. She's put aside her own self to bring attention to something that needed to be, looked at, when we talk about AIDS and, the homeless issues. Like, she went and she did these things. Harry is nothing like his mother because he is not taking after her model. If you see something happening, no matter how uncomfortable it would be, you take yourself there, you place yourself there to bring attention to what is happening so that you can try to fix it. But all he wants to do is cover it up by not going there and completely ignoring the issue. And it's just the lack of leadership by Harry and how he is nothing like his mother at all. And it's appalling because when these things happen and you are on the board, I run a charity and I know that when these things are happening, the people on the board are the ones who are accountable to what is actually happening within the organization. And if you don't take responsibility to fix it, you are the one who ends up getting sued. You're the one who is made accountable for all the actions that are happening within the charity. And it's just appalling to me that he doesn't have to have any accountability and can just, go try to raise money and not take accountability for what is actually happening with his name attached to it. And everything that this man is doing around charity work is putting a stain on his name, because nothing good comes from having Harry's name attached to charity work. Clearly, this is absolutely abhorrent what is happening over there. I mean, what? Do something about it. I just think we have to keep talking about it. It's been going on way too long, and these people are suffering. And you talk about being a humanitarian, Meghan Markle. Excuse me, having, putting the rights of women and supporting women. Well, what about the women who are being abused and having their human rights, tracked, just stifling? How they are completely losing everything over there. It is disgusting. And then to try to make yourself out to be this person who should be propped up as helping people. No, you are a disgrace to anything around humanitarian work, and I'm just so disgusted by them, Dan. Because they're about money. They're about using people's suffering to help themselves. It's not about trying to do the right thing. And this is why Diana was so extraordinary, because she was about doing the right thing, no matter how difficult it was or how unpopular it was. She was about doing the right thing. Completely the opposite of Harry and Meghan.
Meanwhile, Meghan Markle is also facing intense criticism simply because she and Harry are viewed publicly as a single brand. Supporters argue she has nothing directly to do with African parks and should not be blamed for Harry's organizational connections. But critics push back by pointing out that Meghan frequently speaks about women's rights, protecting vulnerable people, and using public platforms for social justice causes. As a result, critics say the couple cannot promote themselves as global advocates while remaining largely silent during controversies involving alleged abuses against women and indigenous communities. And that's why the debate has become so emotionally charged online. Because to supporters of Harry and Meghan, this is yet another example of the couple being targeted by hostile media and royal commentators who scrutinize everything they do. But to critics, this controversy cuts much deeper than ordinary celebrity gossip. They argue that when public figures attach themselves to humanitarian causes, they also inherit responsibility when questions emerge around those organizations. At the same time, the controversy is arriving during an already difficult chapter for the Sussex brand. Questions continue to swirl around their business deals, public popularity, and future direction. Critics have repeatedly pointed to the closure and restructuring surrounding Archewell projects, ongoing debates over media contracts, and scrutiny surrounding the finances and public image of various Sussex-linked ventures. Fair or unfair, the perception among many commentators is that Harry and Meghan are increasingly surrounded by controversy after controversy. And perhaps the biggest problem for the couple is this: public trust is becoming harder to maintain. Because once audiences begin associating public figures with constant scandals, backlash, and unanswered questions, every new headline starts reinforcing an existing narrative. That's the danger royal commentators believe Harry and Meghan now face. Not necessarily one single controversy destroying their image overnight, but a steady accumulation of criticism slowly reshaping how the public views them. Even some former supporters are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Why hasn't Harry personally addressed the situation in a major interview? Why hasn't there been a visible campaign focused on helping affected communities? Why do critics feel like the Sussexes are more active promoting projects, appearances, and Hollywood relationships than confronting controversies tied to their humanitarian image? Those questions continue growing louder with every passing week. And yet, despite the backlash, Harry and Meghan still remain among the most talked about public figures in the world. Every appearance generates headlines. Every statement sparks debate. Every controversy dominates social media. And that level of global attention means even unresolved criticism can quickly snowball into a full-blown reputational crisis. Whether the Sussexes can weather this latest storm may ultimately depend on one thing: whether the public believes they are genuinely committed to accountability, or whether critics succeed in convincing audiences that their humanitarian image has become more about branding than action.
100%. And look at Prince William too, P. Diner, and the changes that he is currently enacting to the duchy, which is a very difficult thing to do. But do not tell me that if Princess Diana or Prince William were made aware of shocking abuses going on within their own charity, that they would not have got on a plane and sorted it out. Of course they would have.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering, what has been going on behind the scenes in around protecting Harry. I think at some point, he has some protections. Why exactly, like you're saying, why have there not been, a huge amount of press around this issue? I think a lot of times when people look at the impoverished people over in Africa, they don't feel a need to intervene. I feel like there is some kind of, lack of concern about people that they feel that are beneath them. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it looks like, because how can you not have sympathy for these people, considering that is what your brand is? You are an advocate for people who don't have a voice. And Megan's always talking about people, women especially, having their voices heard. But are they listening to these women and these girls who are being, raped and beaten and tortured? This is a time to call to Harry and Meghan, for that matter, call their bluff on the things that they say that they are spokespeople for. Well, then why are they not helping these women and these girls? That this is what needs to happen with the press. And I'm going to definitely keep talking about it. It should never go away. There's even been a story about a young girl named Kiki that Harry started his charity, I guess in relation to her and what happened to her as a baby when he was away as he was doing some charity work. And this child, Kiki, was the motivation for Harry to want to, help this girl and other children like her who were abused. But yet he doesn't continue anything that he promised that he would do. Kiki's voice has fallen on deaf ears. Nothing has happened to help this little girl who was completely, horrible things happened to her when she was little, a baby, a child. And it's almost like you don't care anymore. And why has this happened? Because I think that had they gone to Africa and lived over there, like it was discussed before, they would have really been doing something that was meaningful for the people that they once said that they wanted to help. But it's Hollywood. It's about making money in images. And I don't care what Harry says when he talks about not being a part of Meghan and her, what she's doing with Hollywood. You absolutely are, because you're not doing anything about what is going on in Africa. You are completely ignoring it. And instead, you're still by your wife in Hollywood as she tries to cover up also what is happening over in Africa to pursue her Hollywood agenda and making her money. It is appalling and disgusting what they are doing. And I hope that people continue to speak out against this and call them out, because they are not about what they say they want to do.
I don't really understand it, or this is happening in Africa and maybe it's really bad there. Please just remember, this really does matter. Don't just let people not talk about this story, because then Prince Harry is winning. And if these exceptional human beings with heart and generosity really wanted to do the right thing, wouldn't they be on a private jet to Africa tomorrow to be trying to save the Baka people? But Tom Sykes goes on and actually really links this to a much bigger problem contextually for Harry. And he says it's not about the specific allegations, grim though they are.
No, I look at what's happening with Harry and Meghan as a disaster, similar to what happened with Andrew. There's no checks and balances around them at all, right? At least in the palace, you have the men in gray suits. You have those who are protecting, the institution. Harry and Meghan are just out there running roughshod, completely like what Andrew did, with no checks and balances. And this is going to continue to spell disaster for them, because who is checking them? Absolutely nobody. No one checked Andrew and what he did. Look at what's happening to him. And when you get into things that they're doing right now, this is criminal in terms of financial, okay? Because I can tell you, looking at what's going on with Invictus, there's a lot of financial questions around running that organization that I think are going to look towards Harry and Meghan, okay? It's no different, Dan. And they need checks and balances, and they don't have them, and they're going to continue to get in trouble because they feel like they can do whatever they want. But you can't, because these are things that you have to be accountable for as a leader. That is what you do. And if you don't, you're running the risk of getting yourself in a situation where, the government comes in and then they're looking at you, and then you're in trouble because you didn't have anybody helping to protect you from your own ego, your own selfish quest to make millions of dollars, to do what you want, to bring in whoever you want. And when that happens, you end up, actually getting yourself into a lot of trouble. And that's exactly where they're heading right now. This is why they closed down Archewell, because they got themselves in a lot of trouble. And they didn't want to continue to try to, make excuses to justify the things that they did. But they have still some questions to be answered by the government here in the States about Archewell. This is why they're...
Indeed. And P. Dinah, there's also new criticism of Meghan Markle's tie-up with the World Health Organization and Dr. Tedros, who people have followed my reporting on this know that he's an incredibly dodgy man, with the question being asked why the World Health Organization was talking social media with Meghan Markle in Geneva for this event that literally only a handful of people turned up to, when the Ebola nightmare was brewing in Africa, because this week the organization has had to say that the epidemic is outpacing us, even though just 2 weeks ago he was prepared to be rushing around Geneva in order to be pictured with Meghan. And I would argue, P. Dinah, this is yet another charity curse for the couple.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anything that they are attached to, I think, doesn't bring really the kind of work that should be looked upon as good work, because they have brought so much negativity with everything that they do. There's always something that is just not quite right, I feel, when they are a part of it, because they're so self-serving. It's not about the interest of the organization and the people that it is serving. And so when you bring in people like Harry and Meghan, who are about, what they get out of it, there's always going to be this checks and balances around, okay, well, if I do this, what do I get for it? They're not doing it for the sake of the work. There's always something in it for them. And this is why, once again, with this who thing, this is going to also show how Meghan, for that matter, what is she getting out of this? What is it that she is reaping? What kind of rewards is she getting? Because it's going to be there. Otherwise, why would she be involved? That's what she's about.
So where does all of this leave Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? Right now, the Sussexes appear trapped between two completely different public narratives, and that may be the biggest challenge of all. On one side are loyal supporters who believe Harry and Meghan are constantly targeted by hostile media coverage, unfair criticism, and endless online attacks no matter what they do. But on the other side are critics who argue that the couple created a global image built around activism, compassion, and humanitarian leadership, which means difficult questions are inevitable whenever controversy appears around organizations connected to them. And this is why the African Parks backlash feels different from ordinary royal drama. This is not simply another argument about interviews, documentaries, or celebrity gossip. Critics believe this controversy strikes directly at the heart of the Sussex brand itself. Because Harry has spent years presenting himself as someone deeply connected to Africa, humanitarian work, and protecting vulnerable communities. So now, many people are watching closely to see whether his actions match the image he has projected to the world. At the same time, Meghan Markle continues facing enormous scrutiny simply for standing beside Harry. Supporters insist she is unfairly dragged into every controversy connected to her husband. Critics argue that the couple intentionally built themselves as a united public brand, making separation impossible during moments like this. And whether fair or unfair, that reality means every controversy surrounding Harry eventually becomes a controversy surrounding Meghan too. But perhaps the biggest issue for the Sussexes moving forward is perception. In the modern media world, perception can become more powerful than facts themselves. Once a public figure becomes associated with repeated controversy, every new headline starts reinforcing a larger narrative in the minds of audiences. And right now, critics believe Harry and Meghan are facing exactly that problem. From disputes surrounding their media deals to criticism over public appearances and now renewed focus on African parks, opponents say the couple are struggling to escape an image of constant crisis. Still, none of this means the story is finished. Public opinion can change quickly. If Harry chooses to address the controversy directly, take visible action, or become more personally involved in humanitarian efforts connected to the issue, some critics could soften their stance. Supporters would likely rally behind him even more strongly. But if the silence continues, commentators believe the pressure will only intensify. And that is ultimately why this story has exploded back into mainstream discussion. It's no longer just about royal gossip. It's about credibility, accountability, and whether Harry and Meghan can continue presenting themselves as global humanitarian figures while facing growing public demands for transparency and leadership. Love them or hate them, one thing remains undeniable: Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are still among the most polarizing public figures on the planet. Every controversy becomes international news. Every statement sparks debate. Every silence raises questions. And as this latest backlash continues to grow, the entire world is once again watching the Sussexes very closely to see what happens next. What do you think? Are Harry and Meghan being unfairly targeted once again by the media, or do critics have a point when they demand more accountability and action from the Sussexes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this royal drama is far from over.